Hi, I'm Britt,
And my name is Alissa.
and this is Skeletales.
And this is the podcast where we strive to answer the age-old question of, is my dead grandma watching me?
We do. We also share true tales of the strange, unusual, and paranormal.
Heck yeah, we do. What are we talking about this week, Britt?
I had a dream last night, and in my dream, I witnessed us recording a podcast about this topic.
What? I knew you were going to say that.
You knew because you also had the same dream.
Exactly. Yeah. The dream about precognition, premonitions.
Mm-hmm.
Today's theme.
We are talking about premonitions.
I feel like precognition is like the fancy way. Like if you know, like if you're on the in with the whole lingo of premonitions, then precognition is like how you know you're the real deal.
Oh, you're the real deal. Me not. I did not know about precognitions.
Oh, I don't know. I've
heard the word before, but I go with the layman's term,
Okay.
premonitions.
Well, either way, neither of us saw that coming. Hey, Britt, do you want to tell today's first story?
You are way too tired to be recording, but we're going to do it. We're going to tell some freaking stories. Yes, I'm going to tell a story from Opeliger. For my sister's graduation, our whole mom side of the family were visiting from several states away. We were staying in a cabin, and the second to last night there, my cousin had a nightmare that everything was on fire. She was about 10 and almost never had nightmares, so this was very uncharacteristic for her. The next night, my grandmother was in a tizzy about missing her flight the next day. We were in a really small area, so missing a flight wasn't really a risk, but my cousin joined in on the fuss and they were all in a hullabaloo about missing this flight. So the whole family, including me, ended up leaving at 9 p.m. and heading back into town. That night, at 1 a.m., lightning struck the propane tank along the outside of the cabin and created a massive explosion. The cabin that they were staying in was obliterated. In seconds, it burned down to the ground. The small town fire department, made up entirely of volunteers, didn't manage to put the fire out until about 8 a.m. That was when we were originally planned to leave for the airport. If we had left in the morning like planned, every single one of us would have died.
That's crazy. Oh man, that's so much better than any of my stories, Britt. Shit. Are all yours like this? You should just tell them all tonight. Take it from here.
That wasn't even a dream one. Well, there was the cousin had a nightmare of fire, but that,
Yeah. They just got antsy. They're like, we
knew
gotta
there
get
was
out of here.
something. I gotta go.
That was a good one. Well, shit. Hold on. Now I gotta come up with something better. No. Okay, so this one comes from Suana, and they say, I get a lot of premonitions, and I used to try and change things because they are mostly about people getting hurt, but now I don't. There's one I don't mind sharing. I was house sitting for someone in a band, and they had two vans, a yellow one where all the band members would ride, and a blue one with one person and all the instruments and things. Usually the yellow van would lead, and the blue one would follow. When they are real dreams that are going to happen, there is another quality to them, a certain way they feel, and they are close to exact. The dream that I had was that there was a mountainside road going around a curve to the left with 4 lanes. It was night and there were patches of black ice on the road. I noticed that the blue van was in the front, in the outer lane, and the yellow van was beside in the inside lane. I would be behind them, but I was not actually there. I was just seeing it. There was a pink station wagon coming around the curve towards them, and its tire just sort of flew off. And at that same time, the blue van hit a patch of ice and went over the side of the mountain. That is it. That's when I woke up. I knew it was real and that the van didn't have one of those steel fence things in it to hold hold the instruments back so they would die anyway. I did not have a number to call them, so I went to the band leader's wife. She thought I was nuts and would not call them. I was just asking her to call and let them know, then they could change something, leave earlier or later, but she would not call. So then after about 4 days of this dream, the night when I don't dream it, it happens. And next I knew the band leader's daughter was there where I lived. She told me what actually happened was almost exactly the same. Even the pink station wagon, but the blue van did not go over the side. Instead, the tire from the pink car hit the side of the blue van, bounced off, and then into the windshield of the yellow van the band leader drove. The windshield shattered and all the band members were in the hospital getting glass picked out of their skin. That family stayed far away from me after that. They got strange whenever I was around, except for the band leader. He came from a culture that knows and is used to interpreting dreams, and he was very upset with his wife for not listening. But after that, I didn't really tell people anymore.
First of all, can I just say that band leader's wife is a bitch? Why would you not? I mean, even if you say, no, you can't have their number, but at least I'll like call and say, hey, there's this crazy lady talking about vans going off the mountain. Like,
I probably would too, just out of superstition. I'm like, I know it's probably nothing. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. I'd be like, it depends.
I think you believe enough. You've had enough premonitions of your own that you absolutely would at least be like, Mitch, some crazy person is claiming that this will happen. It probably won't, but at least give a little bit of a heads up. Let them decide.
Yeah, I guess I'm like, nah, that sounds crazy. But actually, I've never gotten calls with someone being like, I had a dream and they shall not live to see the end of the tour. You know,
This segues so beautifully to my next story.
Oh, good.
Shall we? This story is from Byron. Back in 1970, my wife and I had recently celebrated our first anniversary, but I couldn't get a 10-day leave that August, so I had to wait till October before we could go on our anniversary bird hunting and fishing trip. I not what I would do, but you know, it's the 70s.
Annual bird hunting and fishing trip. That sounds, you know. Okay.
The drive was 300 miles there and back. And he was in his 8th year at, this is near you, the Air Force Base at McCord in Tacoma. Are you familiar with this?
I am.
So we owned an old 1960s Chevy Impala. Not much to look at, but a reliable car nonetheless. And the day before my leave started, I drove to my local garage for a complete service to ensure it was roadworthy. As they tuned the motor up, it seemed much improved as I drove back to the apartment we rented nearby. Being excited once we'd packed our luggage in the trunk, we couldn't sleep even after doing what young married couples do.
Oh.
And we were both awake watching a late night movie when our phone rang. My wife, Sue, answered to discover that it was a long-distance call from London, England, where her mother and grandmother live. It was her mother calling, which was really unusual for that time, so we suspected that maybe her gran had died. But nope, she was alive and well. Her mother confessed that she had a recurring dream that she saw my wife and I riding in a big blue and white American car. Side note, she'd never seen our car before, and we'd never described it to her. And that something went wrong, that they had ran off the road and the car rolled over and over, and she could see that our faces were covered with blood. To humor her, I promised to take the car back to the garage who serviced it and have them check it again. I was at the garage promptly at 7 a.m. the next morning when they opened, and I explained to the manager what had happened. Don't worry, Sarge. I'll check it myself. Shouldn't take long. Why don't you have breakfast at the cafe next door? Once I check the car, I'll come over for my morning coffee and return the keys to you. He returned moments later with a big grin on his face. Ha! Your English mother-in-law deserves a big kiss. When my mechanics emptied your brake lining yesterday, they forgot to put any new fluid. You had no brakes.
Oh my God.
So followed the mother-in-law's intuition.
Okay, so if someone calls you up and gives you a warning, take heed. Take
your
heed.
last story, they should have listened. Should have listened.
Yep, exactly. Okay, I'm convinced. I guess I can't judge because it hasn't happened, but I think I'd be freaked out and would listen to whoever a little bit.
Alyssa, do you have another story?
I do. So this one comes from Beth Ann, and they say, when I was a teenager, I was living abroad near Brussels, and I had been feeling very down and depressed because of certain personal issues, and I was not sure what to do. One day I was standing on a train platform awaiting the train home. I'm not entirely sure how, but I think a part of me was thinking about just jumping on the tracks as soon as I saw the train approach. The platform was rather crowded, but I was near the front of the crowd. As I was lost in these morbid thoughts, a man came up to me, grabbed my shoulders, kissed me on the mouth, hugged me, and walked away without a word. I'd never seen this man before in my life, and when I turned to look for him, he seemed to have vanished completely. I began, however, to smile and feel some kind of love from this stranger. I did not jump in front of the train that evening. I don't know who that person was, or even if he was real or just a creep, but in some inexplicable way, he may have saved my life.
Like, he probably had this overwhelming compulsion to kiss this stranger.
I don't know if it counts as a premonition, but I like to think that he's like, she's going to do something.
Yes. I read a story about a pregnant woman who had gone to a restaurant. The waiter directed them to the table, and she was about to sit down. He goes, no, don't sit there. Sit right here. And she's like, okay, where? Sits there. The table next to them drinks more and more. And one guy gets so rowdy, he like falls and throws himself back, lands and crushes the chair that she was supposed to be sitting in. And she thinks, I think the waiter had a premonition that I would have been, and my unborn child, squashed by this person.
I can't imagine someone like falling backwards and like crushing a person in a chair. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know. Like, I didn't expect it to go that way. I thought a car was going to run through, not like some drunk dude fell over backwards.
No, I imagine a leaping wrestler crutch, just like,
oh, like okay. Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Like the pile driver. Bam.
Elbows in there.
Okay. Okay. Valid. I'm having a premonition, Britt, that you might have another story to tell us.
I do. This is from Stephen. I was in Tunisia 30 years ago with my girlfriend. She was laying out sunbathing and asked me to go to our room in the hotel. So I went the shortcut into the hotel. There was an indoor pool that was for kids only. I was walking by and stopped, and all of a sudden went into like this trance-like state. I saw a lad about 7 years old with blonde hair. He hit his head on the side of the pool at the bottom, and then a bloke dove in, pulled him out, and was pumping his stomach. Water was coming out of his mouth, and the man said, he's gone. Whew. All of a sudden, I came out of my trance-like state and said to myself, oh my God, I'm going mad. I went up, got the sun lotion from the room, and went back and told my girlfriend what had happened. She said, don't be stupid,
bitch.
I know, right? 10 minutes later, a young girl came out to everyone at the pool and said that a lad had just hit his head on the side of the pool and died right where I was standing. The little boy had blonde hair. I was in shock.
His girlfriend pretty much killed that boy.
Right?
Blood on her hands. Yeah.
It's all on her hands.
Non-believer.
Don't be stupid.
Anytime anyone calls you out of the blue and says, hey, I've got a premonition, don't do that. You should not do that thing.
It would be so easy to just not do the thing.
Don't go to work today.
That reminds me, when we did our tarot episode, the tarot reader had that premonition of the client getting shot in the parking lot of his work. And he literally was like, I will pay you not to go to work today. and save the dude's
Yes.
life.
Well, if someone called me and said I pay you not to go to work, that's a whole different scenario there.
Sold.
Yeah, who wouldn't say no? This is a great segue to my next story, actually.
Perfect.
So this one is from PJ, and they say, my dad had an aortic graft put in by a specialist surgeon in Texas. We live in another state. Well, the graft ended up having a rip where the graft meets the tissue on the descending aorta. Long story short, after some baloney with the hospital and insurance, the hospital in Texas sent their med jet to come pick him up and emergency fly him back to the surgeon. We couldn't go with him since time was critical and something we didn't have. He was dying and the hospital in our state wouldn't assist without paying $11,000 cash right then and there. After he was picked up and we left, I went to sleep because I had been up with him in the hospital for almost 36 hours by that point. In my dream, I dreamed that I was in my bedroom and it was like I never went to sleep. Everything was exactly the same, except someone was walking by the side of my bed and I was still lying down. It was a woman in a long dark gray robe with a hood that covered her face. I could tell by her hands that she had pale ivory skin and that she also had black hair because it came out the hood in some places. She told me not to be scared and that she came to tell me something. Obviously, I'm scared at this point because I was only 18 and didn't understand what was happening. I couldn't move or speak at all. It was like my body was petrified. I could only look at her. She told me that my dad didn't make it to Texas and died on the way, that the size of his wound inside him grew and traveled to his heart and ripped one of the valves. I started to cry, but she put her cold but gentle hand on my cheek and told me not to weep or be afraid for him. She said that she would hold his hand and be there for him to guide him on his way. I woke up at that point, and after about 13 hours, we got a call from the hospital that he had landed, but it was a rough landing because his heart stopped twice and they had to bring him back. He was dead on arrival, ended up on life support for 9 hours. Well, they did surgery and he pulled through, still alive today. He told me when he came back home that he knew he died more than once, but each time he died, he felt himself pulled back instead of just drifting away, like floating in the sea and letting the current take him away. He said when he was on life support and then in recovery, it felt like someone was holding his hand the whole time and never let go. He thought his older sister drove to the hospital and it was her, but she didn't show up until 20-ish hours after he was in recovery. It was one of the most intense but also comforting dreams I've ever had. Looking back on it, it's like something reached out to me and gave me comfort and reassurance that although my dad was in a place fighting for his life, he'd pull through.
Oh my God. Goosebumps to the ceiling. That's amazing. I love that dream.
Who is this lady?
I mean, ivory skin, dark hair sticking out of a hood. Alissa.
Oh, where's my veil? We should start selling veils in the Skeletal shop.
Where the fuck am I going to get a veil? Are you going to make them?
I don't.
I'm not a seamstress.
Yeah, I'll make them. Skeletal
good.
veils. Okay.
Oh, it even rhymes, a skeletal veil.
Skeleveil. You don't find those at your thrift stores? Your when you're going through those underwear drawers, there's never run into a veil over at your what am I thinking of? Estate sale.
Estate sale.
No, I would think.
Honestly, never went to look for one, but now I've got a. Does somebody want a crusty old veil, though?
I don't know. You could make the underwear into veils, possibly, if it's a little lacy numbers in there.
Oh,
Granny's
people will
lacy.
Be lining up for that. Oh, my God.
Skeleveils. Pre-order now.
Stop ordering. We don't have enough granny pennies for all of these veils.
Oh, Lordy. Do you have another story?
I'm so glad you asked. I do. This one comes from Mindless Rooster. That's their first and last name.
That's cute.
I'm 6 years older than my younger brother. When I was 16, I woke up in the middle of the night distraught. I had had a dream that my brother had passed away that was so vivid that my mother had to physically take me to his room to prove he's okay. Look, in my dream, my brother had been run over by a car and died instantly. The next morning, my mother was exhausted from calming me down all night. She gets into her car and starts to back away down the driveway. As she's backing away, she thought of my dream and decided to stop the car and just check on my brother before leaving for work. She stops the car, puts it in park, and when she got out of the car, she found that my little brother had wiped out on his bike and his head was inches from her rear tire. He was positioned in a way that she would have been unable to see him in the mirrors and would have run over him.
Oh, premonition. Oh, bro, brotherly love. I love that.
If Rooster hadn't said, he's gonna die, she would have just
stopped,
mindlessly
intervened,
kept going. Yeah.
He intervened in the premonition. Success. It can be done.
All right, Alissa, I am so ready to hear your next one.
So this one comes from Shauna, and they say, in 2007, I was at university, taking on more than a full course load, waiting tables, doing volunteer work, and generally exhausting myself to death. It was a Friday in March. I'd pulled an all-nighter the night before, and after finishing my afternoon classes, I decided to lie down for a quick rest before my shift at work. As I was lying there with my eyes closed, this vision flashed up behind my eyelids of a person hanging and then someone lifting them up. It startled me to the point that I sat up out of bed, giving up on the idea of sleep and deciding to get ready for work. A couple hours later, I was waiting tables when a man came in the restaurant to see me. I'd never seen this man before, and when he walked in the front door of the restaurant, there was no indication that he was there for me. Yet somehow, instinctively, this uncomfortable feeling started twisting around in my gut. As he spoke to my manager, a feeling of dread passed over me. How did I know they were talking about me? I couldn't hear them. They weren't looking at me. My manager sent me to talk to this unsettling stranger, and he gave me the news. My younger brother was dead. Before the man even explained how he had died, I knew he'd hung himself. It had happened at the approximate time that I had my vision. I've never been fully able to make sense of it, but along with the other experiences in my life, I think it lends itself to the suggestion that we, as humans, as living beings, as parts of the universe, are far more deeply connected than we observe in normal circumstances.
That's what I was going to say. We're all connected.
Yeah, that one was wild. I liked how they wrapped that up, but it's crazy. That's a crazy one.
Well, I feel like we're especially connected with our family too, right? Like
siblings too.
Siblings, invisible bond, like our blood, our brains.
Yeah.
I don't know. It is. We're molecularly connected. I have a story about a sibling that is not about death.
Yeah.
Should I
crawl
share
us,
it?
drag us up from that little pity pit of sadness?
This story comes from Sideswipe. When I was around 9 or 10, me and my older brother, who was 15 or 16 at the time, shared a bedroom. I always slept with the fan on because my brother snored, and the fan noise helped to drown the snoring out. One night, as I was trying to sleep, my fan started making a weird, slowly repeating noise. As I listened, it started to sound like a chorus of low voices in the distance, saying something over and over again. After a minute or two, I heard it repeating the name David over and over. David. David, David, like a crowd cheering for somebody in a sporting event. David, David, David. This started to freak me out, and the more I listened, the clearer the name became. Suddenly, there's someone knocking at the front door, and it's like 11 o'clock at night. My brother gets up to go and see who's there. And for some reason, my parents didn't get up, which in retrospect is weird, but maybe they didn't hear. Anyways, at the door, there was none other than my brother's best friend, David, who was freaked out after he'd committed some type of crime, and he came to my brother for help. I don't remember what had happened exactly, only that it was bad and that my mind was totally blown after hearing this dude's name in my fan and him just showing up at the door. This was decades ago, and David is now in and out of prison and has been for a long time for different things. I have a ton of other stories about David, but that one stands out the most to me because it was just the weirdest premonition.
I know that sound if you've heard it with a fan, right? You can start to hear. I feel like one of my breast pumps used to say Mexico,
I was just about
Mexico, Mexico, or something. Like you would always hear names and like patterns and something. So I do think that's weird, but I also think since his brother's best friend's name is David, he may have been hearing a familiar name,
Well, there is an edit added to the end of this that says, I just want to add that I never heard that noise again from my fan. So it wasn't like his fan regularly said David. Oh my God, the breast pump though. I heard so many things. I actually had a friend who pumped for several months after her child. She made a social media post of all the different things she heard her breast pump saying while she was pumping in the room. All of those months, and wherever the battery life was, or however, I guess, like much liquid there was, it changed what it was telling her that day.
That is so funny. It's true. I'm glad I'm not the only crazy one. What if I was like, oh yeah, my breast pump totally like talked to me.
My brother has a noisemaker for his daughter. They came to visit one time and I helped put her down one night. And it was basically just reading her stories and then just laying in bed with her until she falls asleep. But the noisemaker was on the whole time. And I swear I heard people talking in the noisemaker of just like, oh, hi, hello, oh, hi, the things. And I went back, I left the room and I was like, John, does your noisemaker talk to you? Oh, yeah. There's like, in my mind, there's like little people inside the noisemaker.
Oh, that's so weird. Oh, that's crazy. Well, Brett, is that all we have for this week?
This was freaking fun. I love this topic.
Yes. I'm glad. I knew it would be fun. I had a premonition.
It doesn't get old.
Hey, so if you have a premonition that you would like to write in and tell us about, or you have a premonition that might come true and you want to like state it now, and then we'll see if it happens, that would be fun. You can send that on into the Skeletales Hotbox at skeletalespodcast@gmail.com. You can also call the hotline.
That's right. If you have a premonition that something terrible is about to happen to Alissa and I, and like immediately need to get in contact with us, call our hotline, 302-689-DEAD, 302-689-3323.
You can also find us on all the social medias. We're on Instagram at Skeletales Podcast. We're on Facebook. Come join our Facebook community, Skeletales Community. We have an Etsy shop.
We do. And I'm glad you mentioned it because recently Kathleen bought us some drinks on Etsy. Alissa, let's cheers.
Ooh, cheers.
You ready?
Yep. Thank you, Kathleen.
She bought us a 6-pack of beer, which helps us enjoy recording, but also helps us keep this show going for all of you. So we really, truly appreciate you, Kathleen, and anybody who has supported the show through our merch shop at skeletalespodcast.etsy. We really, truly appreciate it. And I also just want to say that like 90% of the stuff in our merch shop is handmade by Alissa and myself. So we're like, we put in the blood and the sweat into this show, and we just really, it feels good whenever we get that sale and can just know that we're being listened to and supported, and we really appreciate you all.
It is. It's very heartwarming. So thank you. You can also share the show with a friend and leave a review on however you can on whatever podcast listener you listen to. Anything else, Britt?
Yes. Oh, I was driving in my car, Alissa. And I had this flash of something. It was so crazy. It said, haunt y'all later.
Haunt you later. Good night.
Good night.